Hey folks, what's up? How's everybody doing? We're going to get into how to defeat Cop City in Atlanta. Actual point by point, how to stop Cop City in Atlanta. But before we get to that, I want to talk about how Zelensky has joined the reams of officials admitting that the peace agreements signed with Russia, they didn't actually plan on doing them. They were, it was a fake out, which also says to Russia, hey, don't ever sign a peace deal with us again because we don't believe ourselves. We fucking sign these things and we don't give a shit. Zelensky has joined the teams of people admitting this. I'll get into that in a second as well. We also have an update on the horrible earthquake, but beyond that, oh yeah, that story's madness. I'm gonna get into a story that's madness, and that's specific. I'm not gonna tell you what it is. We're gonna get into what Lula's been doing in Brazil. That is pretty fucking awesome, and shows that he actually is making a difference. That it actually matters. It matters for people's lives and things like that, and the such. But yeah, so we're getting all that. Click like, click subscribe, click thumbs up, click share. Thanks for being here. You guys rock. If you want to join the free email list, text the word censored to 33777. It's free to do that. All right. Let's start off with Zelensky, who, is just a straight shooter, man. That guy Zelensky. I just like how he's just always telling the truth. He's always there for the people. He's always, he's maybe it actually facilitates your ability to tell the truth when you're surrounded by Nazi guards. When you got your best Nazis around you, you really become a straight shooter. I've often found that. Oh yeah, and if we have time, I'm also going to get into a clip of MSNBC being fucking ridiculous because that's their job. That's their job. All right. Ukraine Zelensky, and this is coming from geopoliticaleconomy.com, which is the new name of multipolarista.com. I don't know. I don't know, Ben. I love Ben Norton, but this branding change, I can't decide how I feel about it. I'm fine with, maybe decided multipolarista makes people think, oh, it's only a Spanish website, so it's only going to be in Spanish. So maybe I get that aspect of it. You don't want people thinking that. But geopoliticaleconomy.com, I'm asleep before I get to the end of the name. Like if you would ask me right now what's the name of their website, I couldn't tell you. The website I just said. Anyway, that doesn't mean they don't have awesome content. Their content kicks ass. Ukraine's Zelensky admits he sabotaged the Minsk peace deal with Russia, and the West blocked negotiations. So this is a pretty big admission, by the way. Of course, it won't get any coverage in the mainstream media. There will be nothing, but giant admission like this won't get any mention. Ukraine's leader, Zelensky, admitted to a major German newspaper that he refused to implement the Minsk peace deal with Russia. Many of you know the Minsk Accords were two agreements before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They were negotiated in Belarus, signed by Ukraine, Russia, and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE. I don't know if anyone actually says OSCE. OSCE. And overseen by Germany and France in the so-called Normandy format. The accords aim to stop the conflict in Ukraine. So, just to give you the 12-second refresher, and I'll start the refresher at 2014, but it goes back farther. But 2014, the U.S. funds and backs a revolution, a takeover of the government in Ukraine to put in a West-friendly government. That's all been leaked and revealed. We've got internal phone calls from Victoria Nuland saying who they're going to put in as president, etc. Many of the people that they're funding and training in some cases and arming in some cases are Nazis and, Nazi adjacent, to say the least. And these groups were called, like the Azov Battalion, were actually called Nazis by our mainstream media until they weren't anymore. So our mainstream media, even back in 2014, would say the Azov Battalion is a Nazi or neo-Nazi group. The mainstream media would admit that. So starting in 2014, the Donbass region of Ukraine, which was more independent and had a lot of people that considered themselves Russian, they increasingly get attacked by these Nazis that were part of this Maidan coup. And 14 to 15,000 people who consider themselves Russian, yes, they live in Ukraine, but consider themselves Russian, are murdered or killed by these Nazi and Nazi-ish groups. So basically, the war starts in 2014, but we pretend the U.S. propaganda is it started this past February, a year ago. That's the U.S. view. Just focus on a year ago. Don't think of anything before that. All right. It's kind of like they want us to be an Alzheimer patient. The ideal recipient of U.S. Propaganda is an Alzheimer patient. So, starting in 2014 and afterwards, there is these Minsk Agreements, 2014, 2015. The agreement was so Minsk 2, Minsk 1 didn't work. Minsk 2 in 2015 was supposed to be more stable, but Ukraine's previous president, Poroshenko, never truly implemented the agreement, which, gave things to Russia. Russia agreed to do things for Ukraine. You get how a peace agreement works, right? You do this, we'll do that. You do this, we'll do that. It's a lot of that stuff. But if one side doesn't do the you'll do this, then the other side goes, you know what? Then we're not going to do that. And by the way, that explanation was amazing. If you don't do the this, we're not going to do the that. So if you have the Ukraine going, yeah, we signed the agreement, but we're not really going to do the this. And then Russia's like, all right, well, then we're not doing the that. And so you lose the this and the that. And what do you got? You got nothing. When Zelensky ran for president, he had differentiated himself from, and this is pretty hilarious, how Zelensky sold himself, differentiated himself from Poroshenko by pledging to reboot peace negotiations with the Russian-speaking separatists in the east and continue in the direction of the Minsk talks and head towards concluding a ceasefire. Zelensky ran as a fucking peace candidate. I kid you not. I am the comedian peace candidate is how he ran. But soon after coming to power in 2019, Zelensky did a 180 in an interview with German daily Der Spiegel, published on February 9, 2023, so just the other day. Zelensky made it clear that he intentionally chose to sabotage the Minsk peace agreement, which, if it had been fully implemented, if it had actually been done, if the this and the that's had been done, there would have been no Russian invasion. So all of these people wouldn't have died. Both Russians and Ukrainians have died, obviously. All these people wouldn't have died. And you wouldn't have all this destruction. And you wouldn't have the economic ramifications that ripple around the world. But why? So why did why did Ukraine not do the this that would have reciprocated the that? They didn't do it because they're puppets of the West. And the U.S. wanted this proxy war. The U.S. was planning on this proxy war. And so this is Zelensky admitting that he intentionally chose to sabotage Minsk, that he was not going to do the peace deal even as he signed it. It's not that they signed it and they were like, fuck, it turns out we tried to do this and we couldn't get it to happen. Like we tried to get the Nazis to stop killing some folks and they wouldn't stop doing it. By the way, it's my perfect Ukrainian accent. We tried to get them. We tried to do this, and it wouldn't happen. And it's not like that happened. He's saying, and Angela Merkel, and others have also admitted that none of them planned on actually implementing the agreement. The Ukrainian leader complained that the Minsk agreements were an unacceptable concession. Zelensky recalled telling French President Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel that we cannot implement it. Quote, procrastination is perfectly fine in diplomacy, Zelensky said, explaining that he only jumped on the train and pretended to support Minsk in order to negotiate a prisoner swap with Russia and give his country more time to prepare for war. Now, Zelensky was not present when Minsk was signed, but Angela Merkel has also admitted that even as it was being signed, they did not plan to actually do it. And so then Zelensky comes into power, and He also never intended to implement Minsk in order to stop a Russian invasion or a war or anything else. He's saying that it was a way of procrastinating. It was a way of, it's a stall tactic. That's what the Minsk agreements were. And now you have multiple higher ups, Zelensky, Merkel. I think there was a third, maybe it was Martin Sheen. No, I can't remember who the third is, but you've had multiple high level leaders admit that this was a stall tactic. It was a fake peace agreement that they signed in order to get Russia to think there might not be war. And of course, it makes Russia think, why would we get into other agreements? Why would we sit down at the table? I mean, and by the way, Russia has offered to sit down at the table. In fact, they had agreed to an agreement, or were very close to an agreement, in April of last year, so not long after the invasion began. And then Boris Johnson, as a representative of the United States, went running to Zelensky, met with Zelensky, and got him to stop moving towards any kind of peace agreement. Pretty incredible admission. I love how no one has had more like fucking ritzy photo shoots than fucking Zelensky. There's like no, there are no celebrities out there that have had as many glitzy photo shoots. You know, fucking smiling photos all over the world. He's appearing at the Golden Globes. He's up for an Oscar, I think. He's everywhere. It's the PR machine behind Zelensky is truly incredible. When he was a TV star before he became president, he did not have anywhere near this kind of media coverage. He had to become a pretend president to actually get this kind of coverage. Anyway, it's an incredible admission. It's also kind of incredible because you assume these people will just stick with their propaganda and not actually admit that their peace agreement was bullshit from the jump. But here they are admitting it. I guess their reason for admitting it is because they don't want to say, oh, we tried really hard to implement that peace agreement and we just have no control over the worlds and things. So I think it's a bit of a power move to say like, oh no, we wanted to implement it, we would have, but we didn't feel like it. We was just a stall tactic. We were just fucking with Russia. Fuck them up. I guess that's the thinking. I don't know. All right, let's get into actual play-by-play. Play-by-play is not the right word. Step-by-step, we'll say. Actual step-by-step instructions on how to stop Cop City in Atlanta. And these are not mine. I didn't come up with these, but I think they're great. And just to give you again the 30-second refresher, Cop City is the Atlanta project that has now become a national talking point or national discussion. Is a massive multi-million-dollar project to build a fake city in Atlanta that would be used to train cops in urban warfare, to train them how to go door to door and kill people. And it would also be used for Hollywood movies. Yay! Isn't that nice? So it would be used for those two things. And in order to build it, do you think they built it in like a Walmart? Do you think they were like, sorry, Walmart, we're taking over your store and we're putting in a Cop City? No, they were like, let's plow over some forest. Let's plow over the little remaining forest that there is in Atlanta. I think they looked around and they were like, you know, we got too much of in Atlanta. Trees. Trees are where most of our problems originate. And most of them have brown skin too, which I don't like one bit. The joke there is that they're racist. Oh man, it seems that the Rumble stream has stopped. That's not cool. Yeah, I don't think there's actually a way for me to fix it while I'm live. So I'll have to upload this later at Rumble. Yeah, someone's saying it on here too. Rumble stream is frozen. I am sorry about that. Unfortunately, that's not something I can fix. So, actually, if you guys will forgive me, I'll jump over to Rumble and say, oh, maybe I can't. Hold on. 1 second. 1 second. I'll jump over to Rumble and I'll type in. Actually, maybe you guys can do it. No, I'm already here. I'll type into the stream that go to youtube.com/moment of clarity. There we go. All right. Sorry for the delay. I promise I will add those 30 seconds on to the end of this episode. So that you don't have to miss out on 30 seconds there. All right. So I was just saying, Cobb City, they decided to knock over the forest, 100 acres. And so there's protesters there. Most of you already know this. Protesters there. And the cops going in, arresting many, giving them terrorist charges for protecting trees. And they actually killed a person who goes by Tortuguita and or went by that. And it's horrific and horrifying. And that's what our cops do. And as I covered on the stream last Saturday, it was a friendly fire situation where the cops basically started shooting at each other and they killed an innocent forest protector. So all the more reason to stop Cop City. Just yet another reason. There was a good reason to stop it to begin with. But anyway, building the movement to stop Cop City. 3 theories for victory. And the other reason that I'm covering this story, and I think it's important, is because what they talk about here can be used for other fights. It can be used for fights in your area if you're not in Atlanta. And by the way, many of the steps in here are things you can do in your area to help stop Cop City. I know that seems weird because you're like, I'm not in Atlanta, but it actually is things you can do in your area to help stop Cop City. And and these techniques can be used against other protests, other fights. All right. What is your theory of victory? Every struggle includes an implicit theory of victory, a guess about how your actions will lead to a desired outcome. Different parts of our movement have been using different theories with different sets of associated tactics. This is from popularresistance.org, by the way. Great outlet. Scare off the contractors. Forest defenders have won important victories using a combination of the Shack model and the ZAD model, which I'm not going to get into the weeds on those, but you can feel free to look them up. The aim is to make construction economically untenable by maintaining a presence in the forest, sabotaging work, and targeting specific subcontractors locally and elsewhere. In the coming months, forest defenders could reassert a presence in the forest to raise costs for Millsap's development and impede construction on the Cop City site. One thing I don't love, but I understand, it's our culture. Much of our terminology in our culture has been militarized against our will, against our knowledge sometimes, and we use it. You'll use it in football. You'll say, oh, he targeted the man downfield. So much of it has been militarized. And so when they say targeting, they're not talking about killing a subcontractor. They're talking about, aiming your actions toward that subcontractor. So I don't love the military talk, but it's how we speak in our culture. Anyway, this obviously can work against so many different fights, but going after the subcontractor rather than just saying the city's building Cop City, and so therefore we just have to go after our politicians. And by the way, this is what your mainstream media does. They'll tell you that the only way to fight this, the only way, if you want to make a difference, if you want to stop this, the only way is to petition your politicians. You go and you knock on their door and you say, I don't want a Cop City. Or don't knock on their door, actually. Just, you know what? In 2 years, vote, and that's all you got to do. Just do that. Or maybe send a little online petition, and that's all you got to do, really. Just send an online petition, and then you're done. And obviously that's useful to them, right? That's a release valve for your protest, for your anger, for your ire, for your frustration. You just send out that petition and then you go and fucking sit by the pool or whatever the fuck. It is designed to actually take away your action, to take away your anger, to take away your frustration and let it out into a place that is meaningless, largely meaningless. I'm not saying there's never been a petition that didn't do anything, but almost. Yeah, maybe there's been petitions in coordination with about 17 other things that had a major impact. But, and so this is saying, look up the subcontractors. Look who the people are that the city has paid to do this job and make it nearly impossible for them to do that job. And obviously, this is a far more effective tactic than shooting an email to a press officer at an office for a congressman that has never checked his email in the past 30 years. And the press secretary doesn't even give him the 99% of the emails. She gives him the one that was sent from, the New York Times journalist is the one email he's then hand delivered. And all the others just get put in an inbox that go, spam or whatever. And they just ignore it. So, yeah, your politicians are not the only thing that can be done to fight crazy fascistic bullshit like Cop City. All right. That being said, fracture the funders is the number 2 technique. APF, Atlanta Police Force, I believe, could be forced to abandon Cop City if its corporate funders are compelled to pull their money out. Because, see, that's how America works, right? Even when the state, even when the city, even when the so-called civil servants are building this thing, how are they doing it? In coordination with corporations, because we couldn't possibly do something for ourselves. It's got to be connected, intertwined, fucking octopus tentacles around it with corporate America. So obviously there are corporations involved in building this Cop City. And they then continue. Comrades across the country have already started researching and protesting APF funders, a lineup of more than a dozen companies with hundreds of offices nationwide. Tactics here could include office protests, consumer boycotts, divestment campaigns, and job actions by workers in Cop City companies. Okay, who are these crazy funders? Well, I'm going to show you some of them right now. And again, this is a tactic that can be used against anything you're fighting in your city. It's probably intertwined with corporate America. Those corporations have locations. They have brands that they care about. They don't want, I shared the wrong thing. They don't want you to harm their branding. Let's see, here we go. All right, so here are some of the corporations that are funding Cop City. Ever heard of any of these? Bank of America, Home Depot, UPS, Delta Airlines, Merrill Lynch, Truist Bank, Cadence Bank, Wells Fargo, Target, Chase Bank, AT&T, Chick-fil-A. Isn't it nice? Isn't that a nice version of dystopia when we have a fake city knocking down a forest in order for police to train in urban warfare perpetrated on our own citizens, brought to you by Chick-fil-A. Brought to you, fascism, brought to you by Chick-fil-A, by your neighborhood Chick-fil-A. So here's some of the funders. And then by the way, this site is stopcopcitysolidarity.org, which is kind of an odd way to phrase it because it sounds like it's stopping Cop City solidarity, but you get it. Stop Cop City, solidarity. Anyway, stopcopcitysolidarity.org if you want to find this out for yourself. But they have a map of where a lot of these locations are, where you can do things like go protest and, lobby the workers as they walk into their offices to fucking lobby their company to not support Cop City. And of course, any of these companies they're not going to initially they're not going to just go, oh, you know what, they're right about Cobb City, that's a bad thing, because these people wouldn't have signed on if they didn't support all this garbage. But that's not what people are trying to do. They're trying to get it so the Chick-fil-A goes, you know, it looks kind of bad for our brand now that everyone knows that we're supporting this garbage, and someone has been assassinated in the efforts to create this Cobb City. It looks bad for our brand. People aren't going to want the chicken sandwiches as much. You know, we might lose a couple of chicken sandwich customers. There's just a certain number of people that don't like for their chicken it tastes like fascism. I don't know. It's just like 10% of Americans are like, does that taste a little bit like cops murdering an innocent person? Does it just like a hint? Like, it's like an aftertaste. It's like, because the beginning part I really like in my chicken sandwich, but then right at the end I'm like, oh, they murdered an innocent person. I can taste it. I can taste it there. Yeah. And maybe I'll need to wash it down with, oh no, the soda tastes a little bit like arresting people trying to protect trees and calling it terrorism. It tastes just a little bit like that. I don't know why. So there is some of the funders of Cop City. And again, these are techniques and tactics that can be used against projects that are destroying your community. And here's the last one, last effort, last theory for victory against Cobb City. Cobb City could also be defeated if the Atlanta city government is forced to cancel the lease for the site. This strategy does not mean meeting with politicians or electing new ones. Instead, it means exploiting tensions within the ruling class and engaging communities opposed to Cobb City through outreach and protests. We can mobilize sympathizers who have not yet taken a public stand in churches. Oh, a public stand. Who have not yet taken a public stand in churches, nonprofits, neighborhood organizations, progressive unions, and give them concrete ways to join the movement, such as emailing their members, releasing statements, and hosting teach-ins or letter writings. Remember how I said emails don't really work unless they're in coordination with all these other things? This would be an example of that. They are recommending emailing members, but in coordination with everything else they're talking about. Cohering this base can divide city politics, for example, by demanding the mayor cancel Cobb City and resign for overseeing a political assassination, thereby forcing officials to pick sides. In 2021, 4 council members were pushed to vote against the APF lease, but all have since gone quiet behind the mayor claiming the issue is out of their hands. By broadening our base and splitting elites, we can divide the enemy camp and create possibilities for our movement. It's funny that the 4 people that voted against Cobb City, there were 4 council members that voted against Cobb City. Now they've gone quiet. You'd think they would have been the ones that speak up when someone gets murdered and they'd go, see, I voted against that. Instead, they got quiet when shit got worse for Cobb City. You'd think it would be the reverse, but I guess that's the amount of pressure that's exerted against them. So there it is, some techniques. Oh, and here's a long list of what you can do, even if you are not in Atlanta. So I'll go through that in 1 second. But I just want to say, like, this is how to set up. This is how you fucking build a movement that matters. Whether they stop it or not, this is how you do it. You have theories of victory. You have techniques and tactics. You have a bunch of different techniques and tactics, and different people in your groups, maybe in different cities, exert themselves fully towards trying to stop whatever it is you're trying to stop. And they focus on their tactic, their one thing. Maybe you have someone whose sole job is to email those members of whatever group that is going to pressure the council member. But and so that's their one thing. But they're doing it in concert with a bunch of other people, all working together to stop this fucking horror show. So here's what you can do, whether you're in Atlanta or not. Build an action committee where you are. Protest contractors and donors in your area. Investigate whether your workplace or school has a relationship to Cobb City and pressure them to cut ties. And again, many of those workplaces, the ones I just listed, they're not in Atlanta. Many of them are not in Atlanta. I mean, Bank of America is across this country, right? Chick-fil-A is across this country. Host events, write op-eds, and shift the national narrative about Cobb City and Tort's assassination. Tort is short for Tortuguita, who was killed. Link with groups in Atlanta to help them out with stuff they need done. Link with platforms where research is pooled and conduct and contribute your own. Sign on to statements of solidarity. Donate, fundraise. The Atlanta Solidarity Fund supports legal battles, and Tort's family is raising money to come to the U.S. and fight for their memory. Support continued land defense in Atlanta and other creative efforts to impede instruction and make it unprofitable. So there you have it. I hope you found that useful, even if you don't give a fuck about Cobb City, which I hope you do. But even if you don't give a fuck, I hope you see how that's useful for anywhere and everywhere that a fight is going on. All right, let's move on to a little quick update on the earthquake that has destroyed Turkey and Syria. As I covered on a previous live stream, the U.S. has helped create the situation that is killing so many in those areas. I believe the death toll is now over 33,000, which is, I mean, impossible to even comprehend that amount of death and destruction. But not only does the U.S. have sanctions against Syria, stopping many things from that could save people from getting in, but we've helped destroy Syria to the point that this could happen. And here's a little update. Cuba, Venezuela, and China rush aid to earthquake-stricken Syria as the U.S. makes half measures on sanctions. The United States Treasury announced temporary waiver of certain sanctions imposed on Syria to facilitate relief and recovery efforts in the earthquake-hit country. The move follows growing international outrage and public appeals, including by the Syrian government and countries such as Venezuela and China, to remove the brutal and illegal sanctions that the U.S. has imposed on Damascus. This says at least 21,700 people have died, but this is a day old or two. And yeah, it is 2.5 days old. And so it's actually, that death toll is now over 33,000 apparently. Over 79,000 people have been injured and over 3.7 million have been displaced. The U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control issued a blanket Syria general license, which authorizes for 180 days all transactions related to earthquake relief that would be otherwise prohibited by Syrian sanctions. So we've done these little half measures to allow some help, but it's really not much. Meanwhile, while the U.S. and its allies rushed to dispatch rescue teams to Turkey, they dragged their feet on Syria. And a team of Cuban doctors has arrived in Turkey. Cuba is also helping Syria. China announced they'll be providing the first tranche of $5.9 million in emergency aid to Turkey. Beijing also has dispatched an 82-member rescue team that arrived in Turkey's airport. China's ambassador to Syria said that the first Chinese rescue team had arrived in Damascus. A spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry had announced on Wednesday that China will offer $4.4 million in emergency aid to Syria. A team of 73 rescuers from the Palestinian Red Crescent. Russia dispatched 4 aircrafts. Countries including Iraq, Jordan, UAE, Pakistan, and Tunisia have also provided emergency assistance. Basically, everyone that is capable is trying to help in Syria except the United States. The United States, because easing sanctions is like saying, hey, I'm going to stop shooting you as much. Because sanctions is economic war, and we've announced we're going to decrease our economic war a little bit for a couple of weeks or whatever. So, you know, being like, oh yeah, sorry about that earthquake. I'm gonna stop shooting you for I'll half the number of bullets. I'll fire half. I mean, that's basically what we've said. We're not actually sending aid. We're not actually ending the sanctions fully, which is what, if you weren't sociopaths, that's what you should do, right? At minimum, I mean, I don't think the sanctions should exist. Economic war against fucking poor people and children and elderly is sociopathic and insane. However, if it was going to exist, I would say the human thing to do is say, hey, all of the sanctions are stopped for at least a couple of weeks. But no, the U.S. can't even do that. We can't. We can look at fucking children in collapsed buildings and go, we'll allow a little bit of money to get through. We're not going to let large machinery. We're not going to let medication. We'll allow some of the money transfers to get through. We're not going to donate any money ourselves. We'll just allow some to get through. I mean, honestly, stories like this just scream, hey, we're the U.S. and we are a bunch of psychopaths. Right back at you. Anyway, it's not that I had like tons of information for that story. I think you needed that update because you got to understand the amount of death and destruction that's going on there and how much the U.S. is responsible for it. And even now, the U.S. is not fully stopping our sanctions, not sending teams of doctors, none of that. All right. Let's get into what Lula has already done in Brazil. And this is, all other things being equal. Let's say Lula and Bolsonaro agreed on everything. The one thing that I would say you would still 100% should have been fighting for Lula to win that election and to take back Brazil, even if everything else were equal, is the fact that he does not stand for the complete destruction of the Amazon and the killing of the indigenous. Like, even just that one thing is enough. Obviously, there's a million other details of how he's different than Bolsonaro, but here's already the difference that has been made. To end genocide of the indigenous people, Lula launches raids against illegal miners in Amazon. With Brazilian President Lula da Silva warning his administration will not allow illegal mining on indigenous lands, the government announced Wednesday that environmental special forces destroyed at least one helicopter, an airplane, and a bulldozer used by mining mafias in the territory of the Yanomami people in the Amazon rainforest this week. Bolsonaro, on the other hand, was not just turning a blind eye to these mining operations, to destruction of the Amazon. He was encouraging them. He was 100% for destructive mining processes, the destruction of the Amazon, which many call the lungs of the planet, the destruction of and killing of the people, the indigenous that live and take care of these areas. I mean, just a total fascist. And the U.S. helped create some people are telling me that Rumble is working again. Well, shit. It is tempting to do what I normally do and just switch everything over to Rumble right now, but that might be risky. Let's go a little more. We'll see how things are going. Anyway, you have to remember that the U.S. advised Brazil on the lawfare, warfare via law that was used to prosecute and imprison Lula, stopping him from being able to run for president. He was now all those charges have been dropped because it was shown to be a fraud. It was shown to be a fake prosecution and a corrupt prosecution. And the U.S., promoted and advised on that. So in many ways, it was a U.S.-backed coup. Now, the fingers of the U.S. getting Bolsonaro into office may have been a light touch compared to a lot of the things we do. Wall Street Journal, before Bolsonaro won, endorsed Bolsonaro. So it just goes to show the U.S. endorses fascism and tries to stop people like Lula da Silva. The raids aimed at removing illegal mining operations. Oh, I already did that one. Oh, no, I didn't. Mining operations involving tens of thousands of ore and gold miners from the region began on Monday, just over a month after leftist president Lula took office. The Guardian reported that the special forces set up a base near the, Uraracora River? No. Uraracora River? Uraracora River. Can you tell I'm fluent? I'm fluent in Portuguese and Spanish and all of the things. Although that could also be an indigenous word, so maybe it's not Portuguese. But anyway, which illegal miners used during right-wing former President Bolsonaro's administration. Bolsonaro condemned the Yanomami people's control of the land, the largest indigenous territory in Brazil, and encouraged deforestation and mining in the Amazon. Roughly 25,000 illegal miners poured into the region during his four-year term. Jesus Christ, 25,000 miners poured into Brazil in order to gut and steal the resources in that land. And this is part of the problem with our system of capitalism, putting a price tag on everything, right? Land, water, air, everything, trees, is that even in a democratic situation, and let's for a moment pretend that Lula was not taken out by lawfare, but actually just democracy, hashtag democracy, is that you get a right-wing maniac who says, oh yeah, just gut everything, mine everything, strip everything, burn down everything. And you get that person into office, and the amount of damage they're able to do in the span of 2 or 4 years is just epic, and could last thousands of years. I mean, it may last forever. Like, you burn down a section of the Amazon, you're never getting that. Not in our lifetimes. I mean, no time soon are you getting that rainforest back. And if a maniac, I was going to say if a maniac got into the U.S. presidency, they've all been maniacs. But if a specific kind of maniac got into the U.S. presidency and said, hey, all the redwood forests, and by the way, many of them are being cut down, but the remaining redwood forests in the United States, they can all be stripped and burned, used for lumber and everything. Go ahead and do it. And let's say they're only in office for 4 years. You could destroy all of the redwood forests remaining in the U.S., which is like a minuscule percentage of what used to exist. And how long does it take for a redwood to like the real fucking solid redwoods to? How long do they live? Oh, just thousands of years. A large one is like 400 years. So if that guy goes in and 4 years could destroy things that were there for 1,000 years. Same with coral reefs. Same with so many things. I mean, obviously the extinctions you could cause of animals you will never get back is just monumental. The amount of destruction that can be done. And that's why we need not only to get past capitalism, but we need a global understanding of the rights of the environment. We need a global law that says that, trees have rights, rivers have rights, the air has rights, like a sustainable system where you cannot simply just destroy everything around us. And capitalism is the polar opposite. Capitalism is now you could have a socialist community that still decides to chop down all the trees. It's far less likely, but it could still happen. But capitalism actually promotes the chopping down of all the trees and says, yeah, the only value under capitalism, the only value in a tree is to chop it down and sell it. There's no value in the shade or the larger environment it creates around the area, or the fact that it eases the climate crisis. Tree, if you take the temperature, even in a climate crisis, if you take the temperature of tree-lined areas versus treeless areas, you got to see a difference of 20 or 30 degrees Fahrenheit in the same area. So of course trees have make an incredible difference in an area. So honestly, like, if you live in an area and it's starting to heat up, because guess what? The whole world's heating up. You might want to plant some trees. It's not going to solve everything, but it's not going to hurt. Not going to hurt. All right. I'm going to move on to this insanity in Mississippi. Although, is anything that happens in Mississippi not insane? Is there any non-insanity in Mississippi? All right, everybody, remember to hit subscribe, hit thumbs up, hit, if you're on Rumble, hit follow. I hope everyone will check out my Rumble page. I'm hoping to get to 40,000 followers pretty soon. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp. Hit the follow button. And also, before I get to the next story, this show is only possible if you become a member at leecamp.net, or for many of you to become members at leecamp.net, you get a special members-only Q&A every Friday where I answer all your questions. I chat with everybody. You also get a bunch of other members-only stuff. You'll get my new book coming out, I hope, in a month. I've been working hard on it. I hope in a month, called Dangerous Ideas. You'll get that if you're a member. It's a digital book, ebook. For the moment, I'm not going to print the hard copies. So, but you'll get that if you're a member at leecamp.net. You'll get it for free. And so check that out. All right. Here's what's going on in Mississippi. White representatives vote to create a white-appointed court system for the blackest city in America. I mean, could you make up this story? If you wanted to tell someone how racist America was and you made up this story, I'm pretty sure everyone would go, come on, you made that up. That's ridiculous. A white supermajority of the Mississippi House voted after an intense 4+ hour debate. Well, thank God they have a debate to create a separate court system and an expanded police force, surprise, surprise, within the city of Jackson, the blackest city in America, that would be appointed completely by white officials. I mean, how fucking racist and nutty can you get? We're a bunch of white officials. We don't love that there's a black city, the blackest in America, here in Mississippi. And so here's what I'll read those details in a moment, but here's what happens when you have a black city, which there are many cities in America that are predominantly black. Is guess what? A predominant number of the people on city councils and the people in elected judicial positions, they're also black because, it makes sense, right? You're in a majority black area. So these white motherfuckers got together and said, we don't like that there's like a fairly black court system there that maybe understands the black experience in America and the racism in America. So we're going to appoint a new court system completely appointed by white people for this black area. I mean, unbelievable. If House Bill 1020 becomes law later this session, the white Chief Justice of the Mississippi Supreme Court, by the way, Mississippi also a heavily black state as well, but they have a white Chief Justice of the Mississippi Supreme Court, would appoint 2 judges to oversee a new district within the city. One that includes all of the city's majority white neighborhoods, among other areas. The white state attorney general would appoint 4 prosecutors, a county clerk, and 4 public defenders for the new district. And here's the thing, even if that white state attorney general appointed black people to those positions, what do you think the belief system of those people he appoints would be? It'd be kind of like Barack Obama. It's like, was he black? Yes. Did he do anything for Black America? No. Did he do anything to stop the racist foreign policy of the U.S.? No. That's why he got to that position. That's why he was allowed and pushed forward by our incredibly racist system to that position, because he had a belief system that kind of gelled, kind of went with that racist system. The white state public safety commissioner would oversee an expanded Capitol police force run currently by a white chief. The appointments by state officials would occur in lieu of judges and prosecutors being elected by the local residents of Jackson and Hinds County, as is the case in every other municipality and county in the state. So every other municipality and county in Mississippi has elected judges and prosecutors, which is common. These people on the Mississippi City Council, Mississippi State House, have voted to only put in a non-elected system in this one area that is the blackest city in America. I mean, oh, unbelievable. Because it's like, do you not see how racist your shit is? I mean, of course they do see. They just don't care. They are fine with it. All right. I'm just going to announce this next thing. Mumia Abu Jamal, the longtime political prisoner here in America, was a black leader in Philadelphia, then was, I don't know if framed is the right term, but clearly did not get a legitimate trial and has been on death row for decades now. There is an upcoming protest to free Mumia Abu Jamal. Let's see. Thursday, February 16th, coming up. There is actions going on Thursday, February 16th. Longshore workers will shut down the ports of Oakland and San Francisco to demand freedom for Mumia Abu Jamal. And there will be solidarity protests in other areas, but this one is specifically about the Bay Area. And I just wanted to throw that announcement in here so people know if you wanted to be part of that. That article, if you want to find it, is at popularresistance.org. Okay. So, and for those of you who don't know, I mean, I've discussed Mumia before. I actually had his lawyer on Redacted Tonight for an interview a while back, or one of his lawyers. He's, I'm sure, had many over the years. So I'm not going to dig into everything about Mumia, but you should look him up if you don't know much about it. I wanted to play this clip just to wrap up. I wanted to play this clip from MSNBC, and I've started doing this a little bit more. I just kind of go over to one of our garbage mainstream media outlets, and I click on somewhere between 1 and 3 videos, and I pick one to tear apart because they are all such garbage. And I think it helps. It's not that I think that any of you watching right now are like big MSNBC fans, but I think it helps to know how to pick them apart. It helps to know how to tear them shred by shred. And, I'm not saying I have all the answers. Maybe things I'm missing, but, you may shred them in a slightly different way. Like I like to shred, if I have Wolverine claws, I like to shred diagonally, whereas you may shred like down, or some people might do the Wolverine claws straight forward. However it is you shred. Just keep shredding. So and this is also funny because of the MSNBC goons, Ali Velshi here is viewed as one of the more progressive, the slightly on the left of the liberals. So it's always fun to point out how even the most left of MSNBC, because, they also have plenty of right-wingers on there, like Joe Scarborough and all this shit. I mean, they're all really right-wingers if you fucking look at the spectrum correctly, but you know what I mean. Right for their view of things. But Ali Velshi is viewed as one of the more left wing of MSNBC, of the corporate shitbags. And He did this interview about a guy put out a book about something about Nazis. And anyway, I'll just click play and you'll see how funny this is.
Reasons you and I have been talking about this lately is because Nazism used to be a thing that was in history, and yet this new incarnation of neo-Nazism, the racism and anti-Semitism that underpins it, is becoming increasingly prevalent in our world in very violent ways. It's not simply ideology; it's manifesting in a lot of violence in our own country and in Western Europe.
Yeah, and when that happens here, when we see what happens in Charlottesville, when you see
so just to stop there for a second, you hear that and he goes, it's neo-Nazism manifesting itself in throughout the world. And yes, by the way, those are real. And I'm not downgrading any of the fucking Nazi and neo-Nazi groups he's highlighting in America. But they say, and now it's happening in Europe, and you're thinking like, oh, they're going to say Ukraine, huh? Is that what they're talking about? Fucking no. We are allied with Ukrainian Nazis. And they cannot mention that at all. So here they are talking about Nazism in the U.S. And Europe and anti-Semitism. And they can't mention the fact that the U.S. is currently fighting a proxy war allied with Nazis. Like funding and arming Nazis. Like, and on top of that, the U.S. removed back in 2013, the Congress removed the ban Congress had put on funding Nazis. So in 2013, Congress voted to take that away, allowing the funding and arming of Nazis because they knew what they were doing in the U.S. In Ukraine. So they removed that. The U.S. also has never voted. Every year, Russia puts forward in the UN the bill to stop the glorification or stand against the glorification of Nazism. And every year, the U.S. votes against stopping the glorification of Nazism. Even back a few years ago, 2018, I think, it was only two countries that voted against. I think it was Ukraine and U.S. voted against stopping the glorification of Nazism. Meaning they want to continue to glorify Nazism. And of course, MSNBC, in this segment about Nazism, cannot mention any of that. Can't say it.
Kanye West opened his mouth and, throughout all that anti-Semitism, we wring our hands and we say, I can't believe this is happening here. This seems like something that should be happening in Germany. It should be happening in Europe, not here, though, not in America. And then when we were researching the book, we found that there was actually, back in World War II, there was a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden in the heart of New York City, 20,000 Nazis who were cheering. There's giant banners of George Washington, swastikas surrounding it.
So he's absolutely right. And I have covered that before with Government Secrets, one of my podcasts. By the way, if you guys like podcasts, I have 3 of them. One is the audio from these live streams it's called either Moment of Clarity or the Lee Camp Show. I had to rename it on Spotify because they banned me. But so look up either Moment of Clarity or Lee Camp Show if you want this audio. If you want my other podcast, Common Censored and Government Secrets. On Government Secrets, we cover the things that our government in the past generally doesn't want us to know. And one of them is that the U.S. had a lot of Nazis going into World War II. Also, the New York Times said very positive things about Hitler going into World War II and then refused to cover the Holocaust through most of World War II. But yes, there was a rally in Madison Square Garden with thousands of Nazis came out. This is just before the U.S. or a little before the U.S. got involved in World War II. And fucking banners of George Washington with swastikas, exactly how he's saying. Now, here's what he won't, this guest and Ali Velshi aren't willing to take the next jumps, is you have a bunch of pro-Nazi Americans going into World War II, including many of our newspapers and things like that, including Henry Ford, right? Who was one of Hitler's heroes. And Hitler had a life-size portrait of him in his Munich office, Henry Ford. Henry Ford got the highest honor, was given the highest honor by Hitler's government in the 30s before World War II began, and did not return the honor when World War II began. Like, people asked him, are you going to return your German Medal of whatever? And they said, the Ford company said no. But on top of that, then you have World War II end, and the U.S. continues working with Nazis. This guy's not mentioning it. I don't know why. You have Operation Paperclip, where we brought Nazi scientists over the U.S. to help us get to the moon and do other things. So why not? They were just Nazis, but they're smart Nazis. So now there are Nazis. We brought Nazi scientists over. We used them. We had Operation Gladio, which was NATO and CIA, that was about leaving funding and arming for Nazis and ultra-right factions throughout Europe to fight communists if they were to get too active in areas. So now, yes, some are communists, and what is communism? It's a socioeconomic view of the world. So now, in certain areas, these people are like, oh, we should live this way, and they're getting murdered by Nazis that the U.S. is funding and arming, or CIA and NATO, called Operation Gladio, and that also took out political officials. But they weren't just going after communists; they were going after many leftists that, even if they weren't communists, didn't matter. U.S. was involved in that. Now this guy is not talking about it. And this goes up to, by the way, Operation Gladio went into the 90s. And this goes up to today. We're funding and arming Nazis in Ukraine. But this guy can't talk about any of that. He wants to say, wasn't it crazy back in World War II when these Nazis did, we went Madison Square Garden. And that's it. That's where they end the story.
And the first speaker at the rally said, if George Washington were alive today, he'd be friends with Adolf Hitler. So why are we still fighting Nazis in 2023? Because they never left.
Yes, except what they can't say is we're allied with them. Many of them. Now, I'm not saying we never also fight them. Like, there are operations in America to stop Nazis from doing shit, and I hope that continues. But we're also allied with Nazis in Ukraine. And that's not even just coming from me. The New York Times called it, as we discussed earlier with the Zelensky story, the New York Times called the Azov Battalion neo-Nazi. Every mainstream media article did in 2013, 2014, 2015. But now, Azov Battalion is your friends. They're the good guys, right? All right, folks. I just wanted to show you how garbage MSNBC continues to be. Thanks for joining me. I'll be with you Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. I also just did an interview today with Alex Vitale, Professor Alex Vitale, the author of The End of Policing. And I think you'll learn a lot about police and about other ways of setting up a society that does not have so many police running around and killing people. In that interview, that's at youtube.com/behind the headlines. I'll be talking to Rania Kolick in a day. Well, no, 2 days over at youtube.com/behind the headlines. And I'll join you for another live stream right here, either YouTube or rumble.com/Lee Camp on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there, and keep fighting.